He's got running down the half guard. He reels it in at the 15. Cooper Kupp has the catch.
The greatest D tackle ever right here.
It's good. Mike Williams with the grab.
Feeling fresh as hell.
Chargers lead 29-28. The Trojans have won the Rose Bowl.
There he goes. Kashmir Allen, 2 long receiving touchdowns, and now a kick return touchdown. This day belongs to Kaz.
You're listening to the LA Football Podcast.
Hey, what's going on, Los Angeles? Welcome to the LA Football Show right here on the LA Football Network, live on the mightier 1090 ESPN Radio. Coming at you live from the LAFB Lounge. We got the Madman here. I'm your co-host, Ryan Dyrud. Excited to talk preseason football. Your Los Angeles Rams face off against your Los Angeles Chargers in SoFi. So we're doing a joint show. We usually separate the teams, but hey, they're playing each other. So we're doing a full game preview, Rams versus Chargers at SoFi, live football. Excited to get into it. Madman, what's happening?
Oh, can't wait to get into it with you, Rye. So always thrilled to be in the lounge. We got home team versus home team in the home stadium versus the home stadium, and it's just going to be great. I think we've got some delicious matchups here, Rye, with a lot of history, a lot of nuance. I think we're going to get into it and have a lot of fun with this.
Absolutely. You know, it's just, it's so good football's back. I know
No doubt.
I know it's preseason, but hey, it's live ball. It's live hitting, live action. There's a lot of great storylines, probably more so on the Rams side. I think the Chargers are pretty set. We've talked about how loaded the roster is. We don't have to get into that. We probably won't see a lot of those guys. But, you know, we'll see some nice youth, some good depth. And the Rams are interesting just because there is so much unknown outside of basically Stafford, Kupp, and Donald. And then you can maybe sprinkle in Ernest Jones and Jordan Fuller. And outside of that, it's kind of anyone's game of where players line up. So it'll be fun to talk some potential matchup between these two teams. Fun to talk about, you know, maybe some breakout players that could move up the depth chart. Both teams released their unofficial depth chart just a few days ago. So excited to get all into it, Jamal. Real quick. Show is always brought to you by our friends at BetOnline. Head to betonline.ag today. Use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV. That's going to get you a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. If you are a true degenerate, you can bet on preseason. That's a risky business, betting on preseason, because a lot of unknown. But hey, you can do it all at BetOnline. Tell them the guys at the LA Football Network sent you. So, Jamal, how excited are you that we got live action on Saturday?
I'm really excited. This is a really compelling matchup. You know, you got the Chargers' third team versus the Rams' first team out there, so it should be really dynamite. And
yes.
I think and I say that tongue in cheek, Ryan, but as you mentioned, I mean, outside of the handful of 5 guys that we know, the 3 superstars and then, you know, the 2 really nice rotational pieces, I mean, the other 17 guys, in terms of those 17 roster spots, it's going to be wide open. Yeah. And so you are going to see players that ultimately play on the first team of the Rams in the regular season in this game. And I think that's what's so exciting from a Rams perspective.
And it's really the first time we'll probably see that in the Sean McVay era. Yeah. Like, he kind of started the trend of not playing starters in preseason. He was really, if you link back, like when he got hired 5 or 6 years ago, he was one of the first coaches to not play starters a down. Yeah, like, they did not play a snap in preseason, and it was like this big thing. And then now a lot of teams have adopted that. Well, he's kind of going to be forced to play some starters.
I mean, the only way he avoids that is if he plays the popcorn vendor, the churro guy, and so forth in terms of kind of the SoFi staff, because otherwise it's an impossibility. There will be first and second team players seeing the field here. Just by sheer probability and just the principles of mathematics.
Yes, exactly. So this will be fun. We're going to go back and forth going Rams and Chargers. So I know everyone, wants just their Chargers talk, wants just the Rams talk. But since they're playing, we're going to make it real kind of
play nice,
cohesive, play nice. We're all Angelinos here, right? Well, or I mean, a lot of people obviously, hopefully all over the country are listening. But, these are 2 LA teams, but they're playing each other. So we're going to have some fun. So let's start with the Chargers. Everything we just said about the Rams, your opinion, do we see any starters for the Chargers play?
I don't think so. I think this is going to be maybe just the first drive, just to kind of get out there and see. Certainly not Herbert and players of that caliber, but I think we could see some guys, take a couple snaps at the line, a couple snaps, in kind of the defensive front seven, and then I think we're going to sort of segue. But to me, Ryan, the player and the matchup that's so delicious here, and especially you and I do college, we do the NFL, we see guys kind of move to the next level. We have a rematch of the national championship game in terms of Stetson Bennett and Max Duggan. The one thing I will say from a betonline.ag perspective is don't bet that this game is going to end up 65-7 again.
Yes.
So I think if you're taking Max Duggan at plus 58.5, I think you're in a good spot there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we'll start with that. I think that's going to be. I don't think we'll see either Herbert or Stafford.
No.
Definitely don't think that. So we'll talk maybe a little bit more about potential starters we see on each side. But let's start with that matchup because I think that is the most compelling.
No doubt.
Is Stetson Bennett, who's done a lot of good things in camp. We talked about it on our last Rams show. A lot of excitement around him, and a little bit more versatile and athletic maybe than people thought coming out of college, and we've seen that a little bit in camp. And then you have Max Duggan, who was kind of your warrior through college, and then had a really good last year. Ended up winning the Davey O'Brien Award.
Yes.
Snuck into the final round of the draft in the 7th round. Kind of a bit of a head-scratching pick for the Chargers, taking a quarterback when they just extended Easton Stick to kind of be their backup. So, but both guys played in the Natty. Both guys had very successful college careers. And now here they are on the big stage on Saturday night at SoFi squaring off against each other. So I think it's gonna be a blast.
No, it's gonna be a blast, Ryan. And I think there's questions to be answered here. And I think from a Chargers perspective with Max Duggan, you said it best. At the collegiate level, it was 1 year at TCU where he really blew up.
Yeah.
And he was this gamer. The guy played with so much guts and heart and leadership. And he really thrived when the plays kind of broke down and he found a way to sort of scramble and buy time and make throws when he needed to make. But it was very much of a sandlot type of game. Mm-hmm. And he was very much like a varsity blues type of quarterback. He was sort of a poor man's Baker Mayfield in college. When I look at Baker Mayfield at OU, Max Duggan at TCU is very similar, minus a lot of the talent, frankly, just sort of the raw talent. Mm-hmm. And so I'm really curious to see how Max Duggan can play in a more structured environment, and B, with better competition and with a faster game with, narrower windows and things closing at you and in terms of passing windows much more aggressively. So I kind of want to see how much growth Max Duggan has made from that national championship game, not necessarily from a statistical standpoint, but just him, his arm action, his mechanics, his ability to stay in the pocket. How much of college Max Duggan are we going to see? How much of a revised kind of pro version? Because I think he's going to need to kind of make some steps to be kind of the credible backup for the Chargers.
Yeah.
And I think on the flip side, when you talk about Stetson Bennett, the question is, what does he look like when he doesn't have an advantage at every position on the field?
Yep.
And you and I have sort of talked about this at length. The quarterbacks in college that have advantages on the field, if they're not breaking every record, that probably means their game isn't going to translate at the next level. Stetson Bennett was a very good quarterback at Georgia, but he wasn't Joe Burrow, he wasn't Cam Newton, he wasn't Tim Tebow. He was a very good quarterback on a great historic type of team. So obviously we know he's been able to sling it in camp, but can that translate when he doesn't have the same level of separation, when he doesn't have the same level of athlete, when he doesn't have the same amount of time? What does Stetson Bennett look like when the game has been normalized? So I'm really fascinated to see both of these guys.
There was, with Max Duggan's college career, there was never a question of heart.
No.
I think back, we were in Vegas.
Yep.
Still sour over the USC loss to Utah in the Pac-12 title.
Sure.
And the next day was the Big 12 title.
Against K-State.
TCU and K-State. And Max Duggan had just an all-world gamer type game, like running everywhere, bleeding, out of breath, exhausted. Everything he could to win that game ultimately came up short. Kansas State ended up winning the Big 12. TCU still got a bid into the playoff. But that was like who Max Duggan was,
yes,
right, as a T. Flash forward, though, to the NFL, that's all nice, but you can see that ability is not going to translate to the NFL. And so everything you said, how is he going to be in the pocket? How is he going to be in Kellen Moore's system? How is he going to be just staying within the confines of the script and what the play is? Because he's not Lamar Jackson.
No.
He's not Jalen Hurts. He's not this guy that can break away and go make things happen. That's just not who he is. He could do it at TCU against inferior defensive competition, but he's not going to be able to do that even against third-string Rams competition. So really interested to see how he'll do there. And then just to kind of add on Stetson Bennett, he's had a very good camp, but when you're throwing a Cooper Kupp, it makes everyone look better too.
Yeah.
We talk about that. That big highlight of that crossing pattern in the end
For
zone
sure.
where Cooper Kupp dove. Like, Cooper Kupp's going to make every quarterback look pretty good. So how is he going to be throwing to Puka Nacua and if Demarcus Robinson plays with them and some of these other Tyler Johnson, some of these other lesser-known wide receivers in terms of nationally? Obviously, we know them covering the team, but how is that going to look when he's playing with the second string and third string offensive line? So both guys are gamers.
Yep.
Both guys wear their heart on their sleeves, which I think what makes them so fun. And both guys play kind of a different, somewhat style of game, have little different skill sets, but also the same limitations.
Absolutely.
So, a lot of fun.
I think Ryan, you and I both like to bring movies into this, and I'm going to quote one of your favorites. I think Kellen Moore needs to go to Max Duggan and say, I don't want your life. So, I think we're going to need to see a different Max Duggan there. And for Bennett, all the reasons that
Varsity
you just
Blues,
said.
for those who didn't catch
Absolutely.
that.
Varsity Blues.
Yeah.
But, I think here's the other piece of this equation is that both guys have a legitimate shot to be the backup quarterback.
Yeah.
And both guys have, what comes with being a backup quarterback is, God forbid, they're one huge hit away from being the starting quarterback.
Yep.
So, this is going to be very intriguing. And in particular with Duggan and the Easton Stick, sort of dynamic, how is that going to kind of shake out? But you don't draft a quarterback, especially a quarterback who's as decorated as Duggan, just for him to hold a clipboard and not play at all. So I'm really excited about this.
Yeah, it'll be fun. So the other matchup that I'm intrigued, Jamal, let me ask you this first. Is Quentin Johnson going to play, you think, for the Chargers? Do we see? I mean, right now he's kind of slated as wide receiver 3.
Yeah.
Josh Palmer went down in training camp today at the time of this recording on Thursday. We'll know more details. Probably when this is live on Friday, we'll probably know more, but right now we don't. So they're thin already a little bit. Do you think we see QJ or no?
I would have said definitely if Palmer didn't get hurt, but I think they may be a little bit shell-shocked here. He is their first-round pick. My heart is hoping that we get 2 series with Quentin, but I think it's either going to be 1 series or less.
Yeah, because the fun part is if he did, you have on the Rams side Trey Tomlinson, former teammates at TCU.
That's
a lot of
the one
TCU
I
guys
see.
here.
Oh, a lot of TCU
TCU guys here.
But to go see Quentin Johnson versus Hodges Tomlinson is basically, again, what they had every day in practice for a team that went to the college football playoff.
Yeah.
And so much has changed in their lives, but nothing has changed if they get to match up with each other. And I think what would be really fascinating there is if they got the opportunity to match up, what the other would say about how much improvement his counterpart has made.
Yeah.
And in a weird way, I would actually love to see Quentin Johnson play, because if he gets matched up with a player who knows him so well, that barometer, and almost going to sort of Hodges Tomlinson and vice versa, the Rams can do the same with Quentin Johnson and say, how did he do? And to really kind of see the growth would be a terrific kind of experiment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I hope we see it, but at the same time, I'm cautious, because the last thing you want to see is your first round pick, QJ, go down. We'll definitely see Hodges Tomlinson play on the Rams side, being, the depth where he is, the maturation he needs. Everything we've heard out of camp is he's been an absolute ball hawk, but also very aggressive, and the NFL calls a lot more than college, and he's gotten a lot of flags in camp, so that we'll have to keep an eye on during the game. What I will say, Jamal, is if QJ doesn't play, I'm sure we will definitely, regardless, see Tomlinson and Darius Davis.
Yes.
We'll see that matchup regardless.
That's going to be dynamite.
And so that'll be a lot of fun. The speed, they're very similar size-wise.
For sure.
So I think we'll definitely see that at least.
And I know, having sort of observed TCU last year, that those two guys also matched up quite a bit in practice. So that's going to be really dynamite. And I think that, the Chargers are going to dial up some go routes here because of, who Kellen Moore is, because of Justin Herbert. So obviously they're going to institute the same concepts in a preseason game with different players, but that opportunity to kind of match up and see those two teammates go at it, I think is going to be really exciting, and see how they kind of respond to one another. I actually think, Ryan, this is going to be a very high-scoring game.
Yeah.
I think that there's, between the guys at the skill positions and how much they have to prove, I think this has all the makings. This isn't going to be one of those like 17-7 preseason games to me. I think both teams are going to be in the 30s, and I think this is going to be a really fun back and forth, because I think the third dimension of this game is two running backs that also want a lot to prove. Yeah. And when you're talking about Kyren Williams with the Rams, and then you're talking about Isaiah Spiller with the Chargers.
Same draft class,
both from decorated blue chip type of schools, Notre Dame and Texas A&M respectively. Both guys over 1,000 yards. Both guys, with a number of accolades at the collegiate football level. Both guys kind of waiting to break out and have their opportunity. And I think they want to set the stage for this season as being that turning page. So I see both guys kind of going back and forth a little bit as well.
Totally. And I think, we saw the depth charts. We kind of know who's sitting where, at least going into this game. But both those guys you mentioned, Kyren Williams and Isaiah Spiller, are trying to not only overtake their counterparts at one, and Ekeler and Cam Akers, but also at least fully supplant the RB2 as I'm the guy. Because we said that for both these teams, there needs to be some clarity at the running back position. Chargers had clarity, obviously, in Austin Ekeler, but many years they haven't had clarity at the RB2. They've waffled on it. They've gone back and forth. They need that guy that not only may take the torch from Ekeler if he leaves next year, but also can be that true complement in this Kellen Moore system. And with the Rams, with all the turmoil and whatever they've had swirling Cam Akers, or basically everything they've had since Todd Gurley left, they need a guy that can also take the torch, whether it's as a starter or as a true RB2. And so really excited to see Kyren Williams and Isaiah Spiller kind of go head-to-head in a way that we haven't seen yet.
Well, Ryan, you made a really interesting point, and I would counter by saying I think both teams have turmoil at the running back position.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about the type of offseason that Austin Ekeler has had, and we don't need to kind of rehash it, but where is his head? Where is his level of engagement? And obviously he's not going to play in this game, so you don't get any sort of demonstrable evidence that he's sort of locked in outside of just what you're seeing in practice. So this is potentially an audition, obviously not only to solidify RB2, but in the event Austin Ekeler isn't really who he needs to be. We've seen time and again in the history of the NFL, Ryan, when guys have held out, it hasn't really worked out in terms of on-field production that year. I think about Le'Veon Bell, and his sort of trials and tribulations with holding out with the Steelers in the recent past. And then you kind of go further back with Chris Johnson on the Titans after, the 2K year, and then holding out and never quite being the same.
You could stick with the Chargers and go Melvin Gordon.
You can go with the Chargers and go say Melvin Gordon. That's even one, a more appropriate example and one closer to home. So I just, it's a tough situation with Ekeler. And I can't believe I'm saying this. And could you have imagined even saying this 8-9 months ago? But is the Rams running back situation more stable than the Chargers potentially? Just given personalities and dynamics, it's a debate. It's an argument. So I think that both of these guys are not just playing to solidify RB2, but there's a very real possibility these two guys are going to be RB1 for different reasons.
Yeah, and to your point, Ekeler obviously didn't officially hold out, but definitely was searching for a new contract, was searching for a trade partner.
He didn't hold out, but he basically held the coup.
Yes, exactly. He didn't officially sit out at the time, but he verbally and made his presence known that he didn't necessarily want to be there, but wanted to be compensated rightly or wanted to leave. And so, where is that headspace at? And, if it's right, obviously, I think he's going to have a very big year. I also do think, to kind of just counter your point of Chargers versus Rams in the running back room, I think for this season, based on what Eckler's trying to accomplish, I think he does have statistically maybe one of his best, because he's trying to get that last contract. But to that point is the Chargers are basically scouting for next year and beyond, because unless they're going to pay him, I don't know if he'll be back.
Yeah. No, it's a great point. Or is he going to try and do too much?
Yeah.
And is he going to try and hit the home run? And is he only going to play for stats?
Yeah.
So there's a double-edged sword there. I think he's going to go with a mentality of having a big year. But sometimes when you're playing for a stat, you're kind of playing for yourself. Yeah. You're playing for the name on the back and not the name on the front. Then those intentions sometimes become problematic, because you may not just be going for the simple play. You may be trying to do too much.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. So, and I just can't wait to watch Kyren Williams because we wanted to watch him since he got drafted out of Notre Dame and he got injured last year and then was just underutilized. Like him and Isaiah Spiller didn't have the same injury, but like their story is very similar.
Yes.
Like it was a lot of excitement when both teams drafted these guys, and then we just didn't see either of them like at all last year. So excited to see both, and specifically Kyren Williams in this McVay offense. So.
No doubt, Ryan. And then I think, when we kind of segue from those three sort of dimensions, there's kind of a sneaky matchup that I've got my eye on, and I want to get your thoughts, Ryan. Gerard Clark, Logan Bruss. Mm-hmm. I think when you kind of look at O-line, D-line, and thinking about the future of both of these teams, Logan Bruss potentially being a huge anchor. We didn't get our fill of Logan Bruss last year. You and I were both very excited about him in the draft coming from Wisconsin. And then, of course, Gerard Clark, who you and I were both very high on in terms of the draft from Coastal Carolina and all of the things that he could do. We felt like he was woefully underdrafted. That this was a player that potentially was much higher, top 50, top 75 caliber player.
And goes undrafted. Like, it's insane.
And then he goes undrafted. Yeah. It's absolutely unbelievable. So to me, seeing those two guys, much higher quality players than I think they're getting credit for, guys that I think are going to be future anchors of this team, to watch them go head to head, I think is going to be a really nice matchup for that fan to kind of keep an eye on.
Well, I was going to transition to the trenches anyway, because I think what's going to be so interesting to watch is, as we've said many times, the Rams and Sean McVay don't play starters, but there's so many unknowns on the offensive line. So obviously Rob Havenstein won't play. He's your one stalwart at right tackle. But at left tackle, there's still question marks who's going to start. At center, it's looking like it'll be Coleman Shelton. But on the depth chart, it was between him and Brian Allen. And then you have your Steve Avila, who's a rookie. Do you play him?
TCU?
Yeah, another TCU guy. Do you play him as a rookie? And then you have, your guard position. And then Logan Bruss, they're kind of testing at right tackle and guard. The other guys they're moving around. I'm drawing a blank on his other TCU. Noteboom. There we go. Noteboom, who was supposedly going to be your stalwart left tackle, but him and Jackson are finding that out. They're going to try Noteboom otherwheres. And then you look at the Chargers defense line. I don't think you're going to see, Austin Johnson or Sebastian Joseph Day, who's just coming back from like a little camp injury. Tito's still kind of banged up. But you'll see the likes of, Tui Tuipulotu,
absolutely,
Jared Clark, as you mentioned.
Yep.
A lot of depth at that position. So it's going to be
Terrence
really
Lang,
Terrence Lang.
Obviously David Moa, so there's going to be some guys.
So it's going to, and it's just, are we going to see Chargers backups versus Rams starters in this outside of Havenstein? That's kind of the big question mark there.
No question, Ryan. And I think, how they sort of handle the trenches and that's going to be something to really watch for. And how much time Stetson Bennett gets back there, I think is going to be very telling for this season in a lot of ways. Because to your point, Ryan, outside of Havenstein, and maybe one other kind of rotational, not piece, but kind of one sort of rotational cog, you're looking at a situation here where it's basically going to be your starting line.
Yeah.
And so that is an area where the Rams should be able to kind of win the line of scrimmage and be able to do what they want on a consistent basis. If they're getting blown up, that's going to be sort of telling and problematic moving forward. And I think it's going to have to elevate the urgency of how McVay wants to kind of scheme this team moving forward.
Yeah, and to be frank, like they need to trot out the starters outside of Havenstein because they haven't played together. I mean,
they haven't played together.
They were the team last year that led the NFL in most combinations at offensive line.
Yep.
And it will start this year with a new combination yet again because you have the rookie in Avila. Tremaine Ankrum was hurt last year. He's looking like maybe your starting right guard. And then whether it's Shelton or Allen and then playing with if it's Jackson or no. I mean, there's just so much unknown and intangible. Like they're going to have to trot out their starters just to like get some consistency out there. And so the trenches are, I mean, that's the biggest question mark probably on the Rams team outside of secondary. And then when you look at the Chargers, there's really not a lot of questions in terms of their starters, but it's just truly how much depth do they really have? On paper, Jamal, the depth looks great for the front. It's weaker as the edge positions. And so we'll see a lot of Thule. We'll see a lot of Chris Rumph. And then we'll see those deep depth position in the interior just because of the injuries to Tito and some of the other guys. So it'll be fun to see how they go up against this potential Rams starting.
I'm also really curious to see Tui Pelotu. And here's another guy where you and I have kind of talked about the Max Duggans of the world and their game. A lot of the talk last year with Tuipulotu was, hey, his sacks were really sort of a product of the USC offense. Because the USC offense scored so many points, it forced the opponents to be in way more passing situations than they wanted to, way more downs. He got a lot more chances. And given the explosiveness of that offense, they felt like they needed more chunk plays to kind of go shot for shot. And so those are slower developing plays, longer time in the pocket. So long story short, Tuipulotu really was the product of a lot of attempts. You know, it's kind of like that NBA player who, is he getting 28 on 17 shots or is he getting 28 on 30 shots? Mm-hmm. And there was a sense, I'm not saying I agree with this, but there was a sense that Tuipulotu was kind of getting the 28 on 30 shots. He was kind of a volume shooter. So just to see how his game has evolved, he's not got the longest wingspan. He's not the most athletic guy. He's got tremendous football instincts. He knows that the shortest distance from point A to point B is a straight line, but he finds a way to avoid the straight line to take that path of least resistance. How much of those instincts are going to translate at the next level? How comfortable does he look? How athletic does he look?
Yeah.
And so I'm really curious to see Tuipulotu in particular.
Yeah, it'll be fun to watch. Obviously, LA guy, USC. So can't wait to see that. So before we end here, let's flip the trenches now.
Let's flip it.
And starting with the Chargers. Now, here's an interesting thing because you're getting Rashawn Slater back from injury. You're moving Salyer inside, who played in Slater's absence. You're moving Zion over, and then obviously you still have Pipkins and your Corey Linsley, your stalwarts on those positions. So,
and it's on paper, it's a great line.
Oh, it's a great line.
He's dynamite.
It's a great line. But do you think because there is some movement that we see a few series out of the starters?
I think a few. I could see 2 series. I could see 2 series from a few starters just to get a little bit more comfortable with their roles.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the question for me with the Chargers is where does everyone feel most comfortable? Mm-hmm. Because with the Chargers, there's actually a lot of permutations. You've got 3 or 4 guys that can play 3 positions.
Yeah.
You know, so when you start putting all the different combinations together, you're in like 20 different combinations actually. Mm-hmm. You know, and so what's the combination that's going to work best for them? So it's a different question. The Rams are actually trying to fill out their line and figure out like who's actually starter quality. The Chargers know who their starters are, but they don't exactly know where their starters are.
Yeah.
In terms of where they're going to line up on the line. And I think that this is also where Kellen Moore is going to start kind of getting a feel for who does what well. And then as the things that he wants to call more effectively, I think that'll be a little bit of a chess match. So I do see the line not just in game 1, but over the course of the preseason play a little bit more than people expect just to kind of get a sense of that.
Yeah. For me, the biggest thing I'm watching for the Chargers offensive line is the depth. We know how good the starting 5 are going to be.
Exactly.
Do they have another Salyer on the roster? If they, God forbid, lose a guy, can someone fill in and they don't miss a beat, really? That's going to be because I think there is some questions about the offensive line depth. And obviously, Trey Pipkins has been a little banged up in camp. Seems to be fine now, but, you know, he's had his limitations and whatnot. So that's going to be what I'm watching is if they do get a series or 2, what's the next unit look like?
What's the next unit look like? Yep, that's fair.
Even the Rams Super Bowl year, the Rams offensive line luckily was able to stay pretty healthy for the most part. I know Whitworth missed a couple games. But I remember early in that year, there was a lot. I particularly had a lot of concerns about their offensive line depth. And it was like, this thing could go all south if they lose a few pieces. They weathered the storm. But in that 4-game losing streak in November, it's because they were really lacking the offensive line fortitude, and Stafford was getting eaten alive. They had no running game to speak of, and then they got guys back and made that run late and obviously had the historic playoff run. So for this Chargers team, do they have the ability that if something were to happen in November, that they can slide someone in and protect Herbert and keep the running game going? So that's what I'm excited to see.
It's interesting, right? And you and I are kind of looking for different things, you know, versatility with the starters versus, you know, backup depth. I wonder what will be quicker in terms of like what will they discover faster? Yeah. You know, will they discover their starting unit kind of really quickly out of the gate and say, oh no, it's pretty obvious in camp, we kind of saw different guys in different positions. We kind of have a sense of what this is going to look like, and we just want to sort of double down on that. Or do they have their eye on some of these younger kids from a line position and say, look, I think we're very confident who 6, 7, and 8 is going to be from what we've seen behind the veil. And now it's an opportunity to sort of see that for the rest of the country and the market to be able to see it. So that's going to be an interesting, where do they solve, what problem do they solve first?
Yeah.
And how easy is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and then when you flip to the Rams, defensive front line, front seven, Donald obviously will not play. Ernest Jones.
Really? He's not going to play?
He will not play. I wouldn't think Ernest Jones will play either.
No. And
so outside of that, like, the starting positions are wide open for everyone that's going to play, whether it's, Chris, Roseboom, who's going to play probably some in the inside. And obviously we've talked a lot about Bobby Brown, like what is he going to do?
Yep.
And, the guys they just drafted at the defensive tackle position and who they're sliding in and just so much uncertainty the edge position. So they're going to be fun to watch just because it's really open for business.
No doubt. Open for business is the name of the game. So I think who's going to be able to kind of separate and make a name for themselves.
Who separates more, do you think, Bobby Brown or Kobe Turner? Because Kobe Turner, the fact they're putting him at nose tackle, but he's like 40 pounds lighter than Bobby Brown. That shows his athleticism that they're like, we're going to depth chart you as a nose tackle, but you're sized for an edge.
I think it's going to be Kobe Turner.
I think so, too.
I think so. I think that there's a little bit of sort of a chess piece here that's going on with Kobe Turner. You and I talked about it earlier in this week, Ryan. A little concerned about Brown not getting the degree of separation. Mm-hmm. And so, but I think Brown's going to be a guy to watch in terms of what's his motor, what's his mentality going in to game one, kind of knowing that and feeling that. So, but I think Kobe Turner is going to be sneaky good this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too. And the other one, I think Byron Young, who they drafted at the edge, they're really excited about his athleticism. Yep. I think I said in our Wednesday show, I think when it's said and done, Byron Young and Daniel Hardy will be your two starting edges, which combined they have 7 snaps in the NFL?
Yeah,
because Hardy missed all of last year.
Seasoned veterans, absolutely. So it's look. To say that we know what is going to happen with this Rams front and this sort of Rams defense overall, we'd be kidding, the audience, but so would everybody else. And I think that's why we got to tune in. Mm-hmm. And that's why we got to see what's going to be happening here. I think you and I have some pretty good instincts. We've done the preparation. We've watched this team. We've got, obviously, members of our network who have watched this team very closely the last few weeks and months. I think we've got a really good sense of the pulse. But there's still so much variability, particularly with the Rams, that once you put those pads on, once the lights are on, that's when you find out who is who.
Like, can Michael Hoyt set the edge? Can he do that yet? Has he learned to set the edge as an edge player? Ernest Brown, has he
Ernest Brown
carved
is another
himself
one.
out a role as the defensive edge? So the defensive line is like, who is going to help Aaron Donald this year? And they're going to need to find out quick, and this is going to be the first test because they're all going to play outside of Aaron Donald.
No doubt. And not only who is going to help out Aaron Donald this year, but who is someone you can anchor beyond?
Yeah.
Who is someone that you can say, okay, we can start building our defense around some of these players, either as centerpieces or as really good role players, and go get kind of stars or develop stars around them. But, this is about this year, but it's also about who's going to be here for at least, a few seasons.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, it's preseason, but we need a score prediction still. Who you take in? Rams, Chargers, battle for LA.
Rams 38-31.
Rams 38-31.
It's going to be high scoring. There's going to be a lot of fireworks. I think all the matchups that we talked about, we're going to get a little bit of a taste of everything. I think at this stage, the offense is usually ahead of the defense. And I just think the guys who have a lot to prove are very explosive. And I think that becomes a recipe for some missed tackles, some sort of blown coverages, and I think there's going to be some big plays. I think we're going to see some fireworks at SoFi. We've seen a ton of fireworks this last week with Taylor Swift. The fireworks will continue at SoFi, 38-31 Rams.
All right, I like it. I'm going to go... I'll go Chargers. I'll be different. I'll go Chargers 27-24.
Love it.
I think it's going to be a close game, too, back and forth. Maybe we'll see a Max Duggan game-winning drive.
Teach me how to Duggan. Teach me how to Duggan. Teach me how to Duggan. Teach me how to Duggan.
Perfect.
But how great is it that you and I are making score predictions?
I mean, it means football's back.
It's been 9 months in the making. Football is back.
Saturday night, Rams, Chargers, SoFi. This is the LA Football Show. That's Jamal Madney. I'm Ryan Dowd. Thanks all for tuning in. We'll be back next week with our regular Rams show and Chargers show on the LA Football Network, LAFNetwork.com. Everyone enjoy the game. Talk to y'all next week.